Well, I'm Dana Otto. I now identify as genderqueer. Obviously, when I came out, I was a lesbian, but as my life has moved on and evolved and other things have happened in life, I've come to my true identity now. I currently work for Children's Minnesota as a billing specialist and coding person within their clinical side. So they have the hospital side, and then they have the like standalone primary cares. That's what I do. I work for that. It's pretty much me in a nutshell.
I'm Andy. I use he, him pronouns. I am a transgender man. I am the executive director of Twin Cities Pride.
Community is, I think, everything to us. We, as we first got together, we were that couple that just wanted to kind of blend in and live our lives, just like any, I guess, normal hetero couple. We didn't want to be bothered. But I think as time went on, and especially for me, as I've evolved in who I am, like, it's important that we stand up for our community and that we push for the rights for others, because there are people within our community that don't have the same privileges that we do, especially white privilege. Like, we have white privilege, and we try to use that as, a launching point, to help with the community and, fight for the other people that maybe don't have the ability to use their voice so much.
Yeah, I think community is family, right? So when we think about our community as a whole, we think about them as family, and you treat them like that, right? So like Dana said, I mean, we've been together for 15 years, or 14 or whatever it is, 15, 14,
Close enough.
whatever. And it has evolved in our, how we look at the community and what we look forward to them doing. And I think, we're parents of 2 young children. And so for us, it became, we have to start speaking up for our community, not just for our community, but for our kids, to grow up in a world where their family's accepted, they're accepted for who they are, and their identity, and giving them the space to figure it out. And the more we gather with our community, the more they get to see that and realize that it's okay to be different. It's okay not to fall into the norms of society or the colonialism of society. It's okay to be who you are, no matter what that is. And so for us, it's surrounding ourselves with people who aren't afraid to be who they are, and those that are afraid to be who we are, to be that lending hand to show them the way and the path. So yeah, community has become incredibly important. Obviously, with my job, community is what I do every single day. I think when we first started dating, it's the first thing I said to Dana was, I want kids, and if you don't, this is not going to work. Kids were my everything, and they still are. It's part of the reason that I waited so long to transition, was because, back when I was in my 20s, I'm still in my 20s, what I'm talking about. No, it wasn't acceptable. It wasn't a known thing for trans men to have kids. And so that was something that was really important, and I wasn't willing to give that up. Because I didn't know what my life was going to look like at that point. And so, that was one of the things that we discussed was we're bringing kids into a world, especially right now, where it's not super friendly to a family like ours. But I think we look at our kids and look at them as hope and the ability to change the world, right? If you teach them and you mentor them and you show them what the world can be when you're free to be yourself, our hope, I guess, is that they grow up and help change that.
Yeah, absolutely. And our journey to children was a long one. It didn't come easy for us. So I think there were probably many times that, especially for me, like, when is this going to happen for us? Is it worth it? Because the world is turning into such a horrible place. But you know, having kids changes you and it changes your view. And I think, you know, to bring back to Andy's point, you know, like once we brought these kids into the world, we needed to step forward and become a more active part of our community and helping those others within the community that might need the help. For us, you know, our kids come down during the week during setup and they kind of see the village come together, but you know, they're never here. They're still awfully young to be
Yeah.
a part of the actual festival. But they get to see, you know, what it means for all these different people to come together. And, you know, for us, especially for me, when he took on this role as ED, I've pushed to him, it's got to be more than just a festival. The festival is hugely important, don't get me wrong, because it's a safe haven for our entire community to come together. But, you know, let's make our kids proud and let's do some more outreach and let's push Pride to the limit, especially Twin Cities Pride, and, you know, get more involved to show our kids that you need to stand up and you need to help other people. So, well, I love the festival just because you get to see everybody be their authentic self there.
Mm-hmm. And I think you bring up a good point. So Pride started out as a riot, right? And started out as a protest and started out, I mean, when you really think about it, and one of the things that I'm really pushing is that we have to remember who those people were. They were trans people. They were people of color. Like, that is important information as we move forward. And so there is still a piece of Pride that is a riot, that is a protest, that is like, no, we won't be quiet. And why this year, as I really looked at the theme, it was about elevating and amplifying our voices to say, no, we're not going to tolerate this. We are here, and this is who we are, and we shouldn't be shamed for that. And so the thing about the festival and, you know, the celebration is to look and celebrate how far we've come, but also remember that when I look at Loring Park and I see 600,000 people, that we're not alone, that's our community, our allies, and we are all different colors, and we need to celebrate that and be proud of that, but we need to stand together and continue to push forward so that the youth in our community can continue that celebration and it not go away, because it easily could. And I think we sometimes forget that. But as laws are starting to be passed, I think there's a little bit of a shift in going, wait, this can be taken away from us. And, you know, Cynthia Rivera and Marsha P. Johnson, who stood up and said, absolutely not. And we will go down yelling and screaming. A little bit of that mentality is coming back. And we're remembering that there's still a fight ahead of us.
I was in my 20s, living in Wisconsin. I actually went to the Pride Festival with a friend of mine who also worked over there with me, and I wasn't out to my family yet. So, like, my most probably memorable thing was avoiding all the TV cameras, you know, because I didn't want my family to find out that way, you know, so... And now I'm out to my family and, you know, like I can just be myself. So like just the change in, you know, a few years really in that time from when I first went. And then I don't think I went again until you and I started dating and we walked the flag down the parade route.
Yeah.
That would have been our first Pride as a couple, walking the big, huge rainbow flag down.
Yeah, which is a crazy experience.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess my memorable is just still having to hide, even though in a space that was welcoming to me, you know. I mean, that's just kind of, I guess when I think back, it's kind of crazy how far I've come.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
How much my life has changed.
Yeah. For me, my first Pride ever was Twin Cities Pride, and it was because I signed up to be the volunteer coordinator. And so my first Pride, I was working behind the scenes, and I really found my passion there to be able to, you know, form this group of people that puts on this giant event. And at that time, I thought it was giant, let alone now. You know, working with 300 volunteers and just the outpouring of love, you know, everybody was happy. It was like you stepped into the park and it was home. You know, no matter who you were, no matter how you dressed, no matter what was going on, it was home. And I just remember that feeling. And then on Sunday, when it all was done, sitting back and going, wow, like, one, we did it, and two, that was pretty cool to watch. If you truly sit back at Pride and just look at it as a whole and watch people's facial expressions, you know, they're genuinely happy, and you don't see that all the time. You don't see them coming out and wearing what makes them feel really good. And I think at that point, you know, there was some jealousy around, look at that person living their most authentic life. Am I living my most authentic? So yeah, it was, I mean, I'll never forget it. A whole
Have you ever gone as an actual
attendee?
Yeah.
No.
We tried to for a few years.
We did, but
and then
we always got
get
roped back in.
into
Yeah,
being
no.
a day of volunteers. So
Yeah, I don't think I've ever attended Pride as a festival goer. But that's okay. I love what I do.
Yeah, we wouldn't do it any other way.
No. When you look at the history, the answer is no. Prides do not do enough to communicate that history. Twin Cities Pride has had a history pavilion for many, many, many years, right? I would guess at least 25 years. Half the attendees don't even know it exists.
Where's that located at?
Exactly. So where is it located? So there is a building kind of by the playground that is the history pavilion. And we're doing a better job this year at marking it so it's visible. But no, I mean, we don't do a good job of telling how we got there. I look at our brothers and sisters in the Native community, and they do such a good job at storytelling, and we suck at it. Like, we are not good at that, and I don't know why. And it's part of the reason why we're trying to kind of gather stories of our ancestors and our leaders, because we don't do a good job at telling the story. So we're trying to change that narrative a little bit this year and really showing. Most people don't know that there was a young man in his 20s who was gay, who was killed in Loring Park. And that his memorial sits on a bench every year during Pride. And those are the stories that we have to get out. We have to get out that the original Pride in Minneapolis was about 50 people, and 25 of them stayed back in the park, and 25 went out and protested. The people who stayed in the park were there so that they could bail out the people who protested, you know, and that is not a story that is told. And we need to start telling those stories a little bit more. You know, it's a really good point. And it's a challenging thing. You know, how do we make that history kind of rise up so that we lead the future in the right way? And it goes back to lifting those people on our shoulders, right? It's about talking. I just had this conversation the other day with a gentleman who was like, well, I don't see what the big deal is. Well, the big deal is that Marsha P. Johnson, you wouldn't have the rights you have today if a Black trans woman wasn't the one to stand up and say, no, like, we are not going to do this, and we're not going to live this way. And it is encouraging those groups who have been told to be quiet for way too long. We have told way too many groups to be quiet for way too long, and I will not allow that. I want to lift those people up and tell their stories and encourage them to tell their stories and protect those stories. And it's not just about the negativity of what happened. This is reality, right? This is how people were treated, which is why we have to change. And it's standing with those folks that need us to stand with them the most and continue that to live on. Our youth have got to know these stories, and why, for when we first started dating, why it was so important to just live in this, you know, we're just like every other normal couple, and we're just living, and we're just, you know, we have a house, we have cars, we have kids, we have dogs, we have, you know, we're your white picket fence family. We literally have a white picket fence. So,
And the dogs.
And the dogs. But we you know, the people before us fought so hard so that we could live that way. And now, you know, it's that fight to say, okay, but now it's not good enough. Like, we have to be equal across the board. It's not about us blending in, it's about us being equal. And that needs to be across the board to everyone and every culture and everything.
Well, I think too, another important part about the history is, you know, our experience as a, you know, white couple is different than a couple of, you know, that's a Black couple or, you know, BIPOC or, you know, any other. So I think all those stories need to be told, because we need to understand, like, I need to understand the history from a BIPOC member, you know, or an Indigenous person, whoever, because I don't know what that's like. And I think it's important that it's not just about white people telling their version of the history of the LGBT community. We have to get all those stories together, because otherwise it's an incomplete history, you know? I mean, we're seeing that now with everything going on in Florida and all the books they're banning, and it's you know, BIPOC books, it's about slavery, you know, they're pulling anything that makes them look bad about history. And we have to stand up and say, no, we need to be able to keep pushing this forward. And, you know, there's a lot I still need to learn. We both, you know, I mean,
sure.
in the last few years, my eyes have been opened a lot to people that are of, you know, different races than myself. And I've enjoyed learning it, you know, so like, I want that history. I want to know that, you know, and I think it's important to our community on all levels.
Makes you a better person. All of the staff at all the LGBTQ nonprofits, we're big, right? Twin Cities Pride has a really big platform, but there are little organizations that do not get the credit that they deserve. You know, we talk about probably Twin Cities Pride and Out Front are probably the two biggest, but we don't talk about Reclaim. We don't talk about Avenues for Youth. We don't talk about Transforming Families or Queer Space or, you know, Tigers or any of those that are just trying to make a difference. And they deserve the recognition for the blood, sweat, and tears that they pour into this community with very little thank you. When I got into this role, it's a thankless job, right? It is 100% a thankless job. But I know I'm making a difference, and that's what's important. We also need to uplift people like Rox Anderson, who has been fighting for so long to just lift up the stories of the BIPOC folks here in our community. We need to Julie Daffold, who has an amazing story as a trans person. Andrea Jenkins. Gosh, I could go on and on and on about all the community leaders who step up every single day despite the backlash, right? Because we all get it. And most people don't realize that we get hate mail on the daily. We get the phone calls telling us that we're doing everything wrong. And so those are the people that need to stand up and be recognized for the work that they do every single day, down to the person who thinks it's important that these stories are told. You know, even you sit behind my camera, you've heard how many stories now, and that's important. Like, we need to credit the people who are doing the work every single day. Every single day.
That includes you.
Yeah, sure.
He won't say, I will.
Be proud of who you are, right? If the world was all the same, it'd be pretty gosh darn dull. Take care of our youth. We have to take care of our youth. They are so smart and so motivated and passionate, and just sit down and listen to the youth one day and they will blow your mind. But same with the elders. Like, stop and listen to them. Don't just sit by and assume that everybody else is going to do the work. There are a handful of people that you see on the regular basis that, you know, everybody's like, oh, they'll do it, but they're only one person. And it's draining. It's tiring to be the voice all the time. So stand up and be proud of who you are and make your voice heard. Come to the festival, have a good time, enjoy yourself. Let all those worries and all those things go. Even if it's just for a couple hours, let it go and enjoy yourself and be proud of who you are. And at the end of the day, we've got to make this place a better world for our kids, not just mine, but all of them.
Yeah, I think, a big one for me is family is what you make it. Blood does not make a family. Both of us have been very fortunate to have parents that are very supporting, but we know that that's not the case for everybody. So, if your family doesn't accept us, we will,
Yeah.
we will take you in as a family member. To us, when we say community is family, we truly mean that. And then I would challenge people to get involved, whether it's taking a volunteer shift during Twin Cities Pride or a lot of these little organizations that he's talked about, get involved and see the work that needs to happen so that you understand, that there are people fighting for you and your rights every single second of every single day. I can't tell you that he never puts his phone down. Never. And if it's important, he will stop talking to me mid-sentence and take care of it. But that's what's important. Is that there are people out there fighting for you. But get involved so you understand what it is that they're fighting for you for, And it's not for everybody. This life is not for everybody to be the top dog of Twin Cities Pride. It's not. But there are little things that you can do. And I think it's important, it changed my view on a lot of things. I love that 600,000 people are going to get to come and enjoy the festival, and they have no idea what goes on behind the scenes.
How many porta potties we have to place,
Yeah.
and measure, and
and
it's
the late night meetings, but it's worth it in the end to give the community a safe space to just be their authentic selves. So
yeah, for sure, a safe spot.